Trigger warning. In this episode, we discuss sensitive topics including fat phobia, eating disorder, infertility, miscarriages, kidnapping, cults, cheating, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, stalking, self-harm, alcoholism, forced medications, suicide attempts, suicide, pet death, pet abuse, drug use, sex, bullying, cops, psych wards, homophobia, transphobia, religious trauma, blackmail, and other sensitive topics. Hello, and welcome to Sorry for Trauma Dumping. I'm your host, Alex, and today I'm joined with a special guest. Their name is Fairy. They are going to be talking about their story today. I found Fairy on TikTok, and their TikTok is very, very informational. I stumbled upon it and was like, oh my God, I need to have them on the podcast because I think this needs to be widely talked about. So, Fair, how long have you been doing your TikTok?
Not very long actually. So I'm kind of late to the whole TikTok troubled teen industry advocacy stuff because I really just haven't been on TikTok like that. And I actually survived programs like 20 years ago. So I think a lot about how social media has influenced the ability for survivors to even communicate because, it goes so far back. And I think about MySpace. Oh, I loved MySpace.
Yeah, me too. I was a MySpace kid. I actually met my husband on MySpace.
What?
Yes. So
I have a friend who met her husband through a Facebook group that was based around hating Twilight.
Really?
Yeah, when haters come together.
Oh my gosh.
I one time on Facebook found the girl that my boyfriend had cheated on me with 2 years after it happened because we were both hating on him on a status somewhere.
That's funny. Oh my
Right.
gosh. The world is so small. I mean,
it is. But that's like my hometown, like it's like a big town, but it's like everybody somehow knows each other like that.
Yeah.
And it just always like you can't do anything back home. People find out.
Oh yeah. No. Everyone finds out. It never fails.
Right.
All right. So, yeah, go ahead and you can go ahead and tell us your story.
Yeah, so starting from the beginning, I guess, some of this, I try to think about my story chronologically, like where does the path diverge into something wonky? And it was just always kind of wonky. Like I think I'm what happens when you have the black sheep of an immigrant Catholic family and the black sheep of an Appalachian Southern Baptist family, and then they have a kid, and then that kid's like just something else, and you just don't know what to do with that. So I was actually talking to one of my friends about that today because her kid's like kind of going through the same thing, and I'm just like, man, I get it. Like it's taken me a long time, and I just wish that I had somebody. But so my parents actually met in law school, and my mom was already married. Yeah, so there's this whole thing of me needing a paternity test when I was born and all that fun stuff. But like my parents, were working through things and all of that. And then when I was 3, which is the potty training phase, apparently, my dad got a really great business offer. They'd already graduated law school, like after my mom had me. So she was like studying for the bar while she was pregnant. So when I'm 3, he gets this job opportunity. My mom's like not ready to do that yet. So for 6 months, they live apart. And during this time, I'm potty training and it just doesn't stick. So my dad's gone, and I guess in my brain, it was just like this lack of control that led me to just not potty train appropriately. And I started to hold it to the point that it kept going way long until I ended up in the troubled teen industry. But on top of that, there was, my parents moved to Pittsburgh, and then they moved to where I grew up in Ohio. I say grow up, but I was like 6 when we moved there. And I was born in northern Ohio, and we moved to southern Ohio, with Pittsburgh. It's like kind of actually it's really out of the way, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um, really out of the way, but um, so um, during that time, I was going to a lot of private schools, and I met this girl in my favorite school and ended up in this, like, at first it was like sexual exploration thing, but it turned like into I was no longer wanted to do it, and she still wanted to do it. So um that continued for like a while and led to some, personal issues on top of the coming of the internet. So
Mhm.
I'm, in AOL chat rooms talking to grown ass men, probably on a webcam, and self harming. Um, my parents are also fighting all the time, and that just they always were growing up. Just always, they really didn't get along. Get along great now that they're divorced, though. They get along so great. It's weird, according to my fiance. It's a little weird, but uh, all of this, and I just end up attempting suicide. And my parents, after a psych ward or three maybe, send me to a troubled teen program called Falcon Ridge Ranch on March 17th of 2003. Now, they've told me that that was the youngest that I could go. I don't know if that's because of Ohio's regulations or because of Utah's, though. So it was my half birthday, March 17th, March 16th. 16th, because I took a red eye. That's right. Okay, we took a red eye, and I remember that the night before, I had like five internet boyfriends when I was like 13 and a half. So some of them knew before I did. And the night before, my mom had tasked the neighbor girl um, to just like watch me outside and make sure that I didn't self harm, but I still did. And I remember her face when we were going through security, because this is like 6 months after 9/11 for
Okay.
no, not 6 months after 9/11. Oh, it was 2003. So it's like 2.5 years after 9/11.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, 2.5 years. And I when she saw that I had self harmed, like, I remember just like this look of betrayal on her face. And as an adult, like, obviously that stuck with me. The feeling of like, what am I going to do with you?
Mhm.
Um, which stuck with me for 2.5 years, because from there they had told me we were gonna look at a boarding school, and I'd known that we were looking at boarding schools. Those are a whole other thing. Um, and when I get there, the staff walk off with my parents, and the girls there say, "Your parents are gonna leave you here." I was like, "They're not gonna do that. They wouldn't do that to me." And they're like, "Okay, they're gonna do that to you." And plot twist, that is exactly what happened. And I remember watching them walk away as the doors locked, and I couldn't leave
Mhm.
because they were magnetized. So I couldn't leave. And I was there for a year straight. I was one of the younger people there. They had only been open for about a year. By the time that I got there, we were doing things like manual labor. I remember like landscaping at a cemetery. I remember
Okay.
something with like flooding and sandbags. We had horses as well, and like, those are the happy memories. But while there, I was put on a lot of psychiatric medication for my non-compliance. I did eventually get cured of the bathroom issues. It has always stuck with me, and I do think that it's like the one thing I can take out of it. Like, well, no one had really talked to me like that before. Um, but one of the staff members, I was in the special needs room, is what they called it, where if you were being disobedient, you had to be in there all day with your arms out and your legs out and your face on the floor, just all day. I was there a lot. I spent my 14th birthday there, and I remember one of the first times that I was there was, the time that kind of fixed me, because this girl said to me, this staff who was probably in her like 20s or 30s. Um, I worked at a nursing home before this, and grown men would shit themselves and feel so much shame and wouldn't ask me for help. And you feel none of that. And it really had just never occurred to me, like shame in that context, I guess. Like, because before that, my parents would hold me down and give me enemas to make me go to the bathroom, and I'd seen doctors and so many doctors. And I was just always really good at talking and not very good at being understood somehow.
Okay.
Um, so, and that kind of got even worse in the troubled teen industry because it doesn't really matter what you have to say.
So what I'm still very much learning about the turbo teen industry.
Yes.
What is their goal? So like what was your parents' goal of taking you there,
Oh,
I guess?
my parents' goal. So when it comes to the troubled teen industry as a whole, people's kids go there for a variety of reasons, and I can really get into that. But with my parents, at least, um, they felt they were out of options. They were desperate, and my mom repeats the same line you see in documentaries. That's how you know that this is some cult shit. Part of my I'm gonna swear. I can't help it.
Oh, you're fine. No, you're fine.
That's how you know this is some cult shit, is because I was watching the documentary Hell Camp, which I did end up in a wilderness. We're only at the first year, so um, I was watching this woman, even with a little small dog in her lap, just like my mom, sitting in a chair, and she's like, I I just thought I was gonna lose my son. I just thought I was gonna lose my son. This is my only option, and my mom has the small dog. She has six of them, and she said that line for the last 20 something years. And it really hit me then that it's like, oh, I am first off not nearly alone, and second off, this is not just on me. This is also brainwashing on my parents. And that's actually a realization I should have had with my therapy session earlier. So I'm gonna just benchmark that. But so that's been the last 20 years. I just kind of put it behind me and not been allowed to talk to about it. It's not like anyone was holding me back. It was just like in my mind there was this wall. So the troubled teen industry is just these places that were literally originated with a cult called Synanon, which I believe has ties to Scientology. This website called kidsoverprofits.org. It's run by a survivor. You can put that in later. It's got the whole history. So I may be a little wonky. You might want to just go back and edit or whatever. But I searched for this cult called Synanon, which leads to like this first program called The Seed, and then everything comes from that. Like there's a podcast I'm listening to called Gooned, and she says that this is like where it starts and everything comes off of it like branches, and it really does. You can see this in this mind map that this other survivors created. And right now it's like you have a few different we'll call it like a hydro, where it's like, this company has other heads that pop up. It's like, oh, this program gets shut down, so they reopen as another one. So you have like a parent or like four or five. There's Acadia, Universal Healthcare Solutions, and Vivant, I think, because that's what like the current names are. But here in my state, we've got one that's run by a for-profit prison company, like the second largest one, that actually has like multiple all across the United States. Talk about the prison industrial complex, getting them young. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, but so these places like have been around since like I think like the earliest date I saw on the mind map was like 1940. So,
Okay.
and that would be like the people probably meeting and talking and being like, man, we should start like a fucking cult, man. We should totally start a cult, right? But other podcasts go into the other aspects. Is like you have the branches like the wilderness therapy, where you're put in survivalist situations and just forced to just live like that for whatever, get good. And people die because of course they do. And in residential programs, people die because of course they do. You shouldn't be holding children down. That's why you lay down like this, because if you're not laying down like this, they're holding you down like that. Or they're giving you meds. Or, I guess I'm lucky that my parents dropped me and they didn't pay someone to kidnap me that time. Um, so it's this whole industry that goes back to this cult, and you can track the different ways that they started with like attack therapy where you'd like scream and stuff. Like that was before my time. In mine we had issues group. So positive pure culture, my username on TikTok is positive pure cult because the program that I went through was positive pure culture, which is more of the mind control with a little bit of the physical stuff. um I guess depending on the program. Because they had another program like literally 30 minutes away, probably. And that one was behavior modification. It was shut down for a riot. Um, so, and they would threaten people with getting sent to their other program. But with me, I was not compliant after a year, so they sent me to wilderness. Um, and that was actually, if you remember, around the time it's 2005, Brat Camp came out. It was like
Yeah.
I've never seen it, but that was like literally 3 days after I got out of wilderness was the day it aired.
Okay.
So it was, but not the same program that I was in. The one I was in, my backpack was made out of a branch that I bent into a U shape, and I put all my stuff in a tarp, and then I'd like tie it down with suspension, like
Oh yeah. So you were
and
like
all my
legit
food
living in the wilderness.
and like sticks and stones to make hot food. The first two, at least like until you learned how to bust a coal, they called it, you didn't get to eat hot food, and you didn't get to join the group. So I had um ramen uncooked and a big tub of peanut butter. So I was like crackers. Um, uh, and I'm kind of like I'm talking about this stuff like it's not horrifically traumatic, and like there was no bad parts. There were definitely a lot of
Hmm.
bad parts. But I guess it's like where to start with that.
Right. Right.
Because it's like, I wasn't getting with the program. So my parents were convinced to hire the goon squad to take me from my residential program that I had already been and couldn't leave, and take me into the middle of nowhere, and the literally on the Pony Express, where like mail was delivered in the old timey West.
Right.
Because there were wild Mustangs around there. I didn't encounter those. I did encounter a lot of terrifying wilderness. And getting lost trying to find a place to go to the bathroom. um, but um, and then knowing that after I'm done being in this gross, not showering, walking all the time in the rain and the muck and eating coal food, like on hot coals is how you cook it in the
Hmm.
first place. Um, After all of that, I'm going back to a program. I'm not going home. I'm going back to a program. And I got like a home visit before I went to wilderness. I think maybe. Um, I have like this newspaper article that my parents made me do an interview on one of my home visits, saying how thankful I was and grateful for the love. Some psychiatrists talked about what cutting is. I'd never spoken to that psychiatrist in my life. Probably an educational consultant who gets paid when people go into programs, because that's how my parents ended up sending me to programs, is through an educational consultant.
Right.
Um, and Also, my mom says, I remember the first day my kid cut. And I was like, she listed a date that I was already in the program. She listed as like April of 2004. It's like I joined it. I joined in March. I joined in March.
Yeah.
And even trying to say things like that for the last 20 years. I mean, that's the document that's out there and says that this is my story, but that's not my story. I haven't even gotten to dictate what my own story is from that program. Um, Came back, and then my grandma died. So I got pulled out of the program, went to my grandma's funeral, and then after like a month, I started at an actual boarding school. And I had spent the last, year and a half around only girls. So, culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
And I was only there for 2 months before getting kicked out because I had been self harming. Because in those 2 months, I had gotten sexually assaulted by two of my male peers. And the second time, I, I was actually thinking about it in therapy today, processing it, I guess, for the first time that was the second time I got gooned. I had been self harming, but the boarding school was nice, and they were going to give me like a respite and a cabin somewhere. I'm kind of fuzzy on the details, but they were like, as long as you just don't do this, just wait until the weekend, right? And you'll go. So it was like I had like 2 days or something like that. And I'm going on a walk with a classmate because we had that kind of freedom. We could go corn mazes and all sorts of things. I got to go to FYE and buy my first CDs for myself. And I'm telling him, about this respite stuff. And he said he needs, like he's going to miss me and like maybe I should give him something to remember him by. And I remember specifically using my teeth. So I don't think you finished. And I felt proud of that. Even though like I didn't really understand what was going on.
Right.
But I also felt for some reason like I couldn't tell anybody because he was likable. It's not like anybody said that to me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had been brainwashed for a year and a half. I look back at like the journal that I did in wilderness, and the therapist that I had. He is now doing TED Talks and has his own therapy network and barely had time for me, a kid under a tarp when it's raining on a mountain. Like, come on. He like literally left the next month according to the timeline of his career, and I'm just like, cool, that's why you weren't paying attention to me specifically.
Right.
Screw you and Mitt Romney. Bain Capital is one of the big funders of the troubled teen industry, and part of why Utah has so many programs because they're a lot more lax in their legislation. Because a lot of their legislators are like, oh, well, I'll take your child abuse money. I'll take that shit right now. Like,
right.
So I get sexually assaulted by this guy and go to the shower and start cutting. And I get caught immediately. And they call my parents and kick me out. And my parents still have to pay the 18 grand.
And I think that's crazy, the fact that they kicked you out because you were self-harming.
Because they had given me that final warning, essentially. Like, they had given me the last option or whatever, and it was like, yeah, I guess I should have said something. Like, I guess I should have, but, like, when was I going to? And
right.
And the next part of the story is fun fact I did. Actually. I have the psychiatric notes from when I got sent back to Falcon Ridge Ranch, which is still open. Of the 4 places I've been, that one's still open. Get sent back to Falcon Ridge Ranch to this psychiatrist that I saw probably like twice in the entirety of the time. And I specifically called it mouth rape. And it's like in there with the quotation marks. And then somehow he brainwashes me in like the next sentence into saying that it was because I lacked proper boundaries with boys. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
I was just brainwashed by Mormons. Oh, did I also mention, fun fact, speaking of cults, literal cult next door in Hurricane, Utah, because I was in Virgin, Utah. Mm-hmm. In Hurricane, Utah, same time period, the docuseries Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey. They're fundamentalist Mormons, child brides, sister wives, tax evasion.
Yeah.
And we would see them, you would know them. And the Mormons that were raising the abused children, and myself, the other abused children, would see those guys with their like full denim outfits and their braids and long hair, and just be like, those are the polygamists. Because you have the bad Mormons, and you have those are the polygamists, and then you have us, the
Right.
good Mormons, right? Crazy. And now I think about it, and I was like, imagine this. We both pull up to the Golden Corral, two white vans. Out comes one. It's a bunch of 13 to 18-year-old girls with some older women and a bunch of tiny, tiny children. And they're all in denim. And then on this side, it's a bunch of girls that make you a little nervous to see them in the bathroom, maybe. And also, people are making sure that they don't go to the bathroom while they're at the Golden Corral. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what an experience for those staffers. I would love to get their take on just like an average day that we walked in.
Right.
Because I know for a fact that we were both there at one time. Like, so he didn't take me seriously about what happened. And I'd already, been sexually assaulted, and I'd already talked to the therapist I had there the first time. She's dead now, so I can say her name. It's Carol Bell. And I had to fight for myself to get therapy homework from her about it, because it was from a chick. Because I got sexually assaulted by a chick my age. That good old Mormon fundamentalism, I guess.
Right.
Deep inside, that gay is not okay, and if you didn't want it, that's okay. That's okay, I guess. We aren't that nice here. You're already here in the troubled teen industry, so you're already gonna like maybe go to hell. But I did see a Mormon baptism actually while I was there. So I already was not believed. And I was there for a few more months, and my parents found another program for me to go to, another positive peer culture program. The groups that we did, these issues groups, I should touch back on that. So with positive peer culture, there was like these issues that you had to work on through your program. You had these levels, like you had to earn privileges. The first 30 days, you don't have shoes. I don't think you can talk. I can't remember, but I don't think you can talk to your parents. You have like a controlled list of who you can and can't talk to via letter, but I don't think I got to call many other people outside of my family. Mascara, I think, was eventually a privilege, and going off campus to Golden Corral and stuff like that, or community service, or Mormon church. I think that was like the first thing you can go to Mormon church. I think you've earned that. You've earned some of our special spicy Jesus. Actually, I think it's Jesus extra mild.
Okay.
I think that would be like extra bland. Like take the mayonnaise out somehow.
Oh my god.
It's
You're
just
killing
bread.
me.
It's just bread. It's just bread.
It's just
we
bread.
brought you a cracker, a really stale one. But we want your cheese to be like absolutely fresh, like fresh from the cow. That's how the Mormons work.
That's so funny.
I'm trying not to be. I'm not like, and I know hashtag not all Mormons. I just
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it.
in the troubled teen industry, like it's like any other abusive industry.
Mhm.
You're sending your kids to another state where there's no certification for the people who work there. They're getting paid minimum wage, and they can totally bounce around between different programs. Like we all love true crime, and we like read about these or watch the documentaries about the guys, who just bounce around different states or up and down the highway or whatever, and you can track it like that. It's like, yeah, you could do that with these people too. I mean,
Right.
kids die in programs. You think that's just like an accident every time? No, it's absolutely preventable. It's absolutely predictable, and it's because we just let this guy go from here to there, like the cops is here to there and there, and like,
Mm-hmm.
how like the guy who did Wilderness, he had multiple lawsuits, I believe, for kids dying in his program, and he still kept opening up more. And people, he did go by a fake name because it was like the 80s and 90s, and you could like still get away with that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But so from there, I go to another one in New Mexico, from Utah to New Mexico. At that time my dad took me, because I remember we went to Pompano for the first time, because it was right next to the hotel. Um, and that was at it had been a tuberculosis treatment facility before that, so it's like historically a treatment center, um, probably haunted. There's debate there, and I gained a lot of weight from the psych meds I was on. I gained like 60 pounds in 2 months, and my mother was appalled. I, you know, part of the issues group that's like attack therapy is that your whole group of the girls you live with every single day, um, they also have to they get incentivized to narc on you, and
Okay.
even make shit up. I had a friend who was, you get so bored, you just do weird things. And for me, it was like, I love Linkin Park. I'm gonna just write all of the lyrics I can still remember, in different fonts in this whole journal. It looks obsessive, but I literally had not much else going on. So,
Mm-hmm.
she made up like her own language to write in out of boredom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all of your stuff is being monitored. Any mail you send, any mail you receive, all of your conversations. There's always someone hovering when you do anything, and there's always someone there. So, um, another girl noticed that and said that it was she said it was gang speak.
Oh, okay.
So we had the same therapist, and the therapist was not unconvinced of this fact. So she made my friend like watch a bunch of stuff, and it's like they're literally educating on stuff to do later. Because for me, I had never seen a drug, never done drugs, never done anything like that. I was just a sad, shitty kid. I like to call myself literally shitty. Because that's the other thing, is like the sense of humor I've developed in looking back. I had Carol, the other therapist I've heard about, but I can't remember what he looks like. I can't remember his name. And all of the documentation about him and Falcon Ridge Ranch from back then, I cannot find. Which sucks, because I remember I was young and I was naive. I remember, let's see, April was literally I probably had been there a month on 420. I didn't know what 420 was. I am a huge stoner now, but I did not know what 420 was then. And my friend, who is currently in Florida, that's where she lives, uh, she told me that 420 was like the stoner holiday. But it was also that it was Hitler's birthday, and that
Is
there
it
was
really?
yes, I
Oh,
believe that is
okay.
actually true. But then again, I might just still be naive, because she made me say something very offensive because I didn't know that it was offensive. And like everyone laughed, and that's when I was like, okay, so I said something bad, but I really don't understand what I said. Yeah, it was not good.
I just fact checked it. Yes, Hitler's birthday is 420. Just so it is right, because I was like, no shit, really? Okay, but yes, I don't want to cut
So
you
like,
off.
I'm that young, I'm that naive
Mm-hmm.
going into it. The first time I saw drugs was a cop would come in. He had like made sort of like his own little mini textbooks, kind of like they were spiral bound, and they were like cases that he had. And we read that because, like, what else are we reading? Mormon propaganda, Gossip Girl. I did like that. That was like the realest thing that I read, other than these cases, because like I found out that Go Ask Alice was Mormon propaganda.
Is it really?
Yeah, it was made by the Mormon Church.
Oh my gosh, you're
And
teaching me
also like
so
A
much
Child Called
today.
It, and the James Frey. Yeah, like all of that stuff. It's like they're literally screaming fraud at your face while all of these other people are profiting for the same thing. But they've been found out. So why is this still happening? I don't know. The first time I saw drugs was like he was like holding a crack rock, and I remember that we were like, I had earned the right to go to Pony Rancher Bob's ranch to do horse stuff. And that the Officer Brad was holding this crack rock, and that was my first introduction. It's like 0 to crack rock in his hand, right? I was like, okay,
Right.
and like I'm just sitting here like looking at my friends like they have done drugs, they have done these drugs before. Are they craving the drugs? Am I gonna have to talk to them about this? The issues group, like who's gonna say something? Like, because like that's
Right.
the other thing is sometimes you just gotta make up bullshit. You like people make up bullshit about you, but you also gotta make up bullshit because it's like you gotta seem like you're making progress. You can see my wilderness journal is different from these other journals filled with like Linkin Park lyrics because it's like this forced chipper of like I'll get to go back if I just do what they say. Like I just
Mhm.
as long as I do what they say, and that's how I spent the last 30 years of my life. It feels like well 20 I guess, but the other therapist. I'm sorry, I got distracted. The other
No,
therapist
you're
name is
fine.
I was naive, so they made me make a racist joke relating to Hitler, but they were also making this joke, Rob the rapist, and they're like, yeah, because therapist. So it's the rapist. But it wasn't a joke to anyone who had robbed the therapist. And I didn't know that until this year. And I don't know his name. And like he could be in another program.
Right.
And it breaks my heart to know that like there are people who might never go to therapy because that happened.
Mhm.
And the industry props up people like that. I mean, there was a guy who was associated with one of the so it was like Synanon and then the Seed and there's one called Sea-Doo. I don't know as much about that. I have a friend who does a podcast, and she just like sent me the episode. I hadn't gotten around to it today. Um, but she went to Sea-Doo, and there was this guy who, you know, everybody kind of knew that he liked to touch boys, the pretty ones. And he ends up out of Sea-Doo working with the Amish as like a principal and does the same thing. It's like you follow, you're a disease and spread it everywhere,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, but
And going on the vulnerable too.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing is like you see the review, like how do parents get conned into this, right? You're like,
Mhm.
who um the Goon podcast, like one of the moms literally talks about like how you're told, well, your kid's going to lie to you. They're going to say things like, I'm not getting enough food. They're going to say things like, I'm not getting enough sleep. They're going to say things like, Mom, they're hurting me.
Mhm.
They're I really don't know how they're going to explain things like, Mom, the therapist is raping me, but
Right.
yeah, oh, probably here we go. It's probably something like, that's probably just a misinterpretation of the deep vulnerability that happens in therapy.
Or
Well,
they're just
no
making it
one's
up for attention so they can leave or
or like hear me out. We have so many different kinds of therapy, and like no one's accusing the horses of rape.
right.
Of horse therapy, and no one's accused the horse. So I pick the horse. Not a horse girl, a force girl. Oh God, that is like a bumper sticker for me, actually. Being like non-binary because I have like a flag that says "fuck around and find out" in the non-binary pride colors with like a gator on it.
Right.
Not a horse girl, just a force girl. Because I even like when I left the program, they gave me a bridle with my name engraved on it. Yeah, I also like left my wilderness program with like my stick for make fire and stone thing.
Mhm.
I didn't keep up with that, but I will say like super insulting. I went back to the main program after wilderness, and they decided that week that they would all go camping. They took me camping right after wilderness. I believe that was still the summer, so it was still full of bugs and booty.
Right.
Gross. It's like,
Right.
at least I got a shower, I guess. It's the small things.
Yeah.
Um, um, but at the New Mexico program, I gained a lot of weight from the meds. They also had churros, and those were so good. And anytime I gained weight, my diet would be restricted by staff. I didn't get to say what I ate. Like I had the options. I could switch to vegetarian, and I did at one point. Also just trying to lose weight because psych meds, like the weight just does not come off.
Hmm.
All of that weight stuck on me until I had weight loss surgery at 28. Like my all over. I have
Yeah.
PCOS as well, but like, yeah, being on Depakote at 15, like, probably not a good idea for
Right.
someone with like thyroid issues. I don't know. Uh, so I gained all this weight. I remember one of the manual labor things we had to do was like paint a barbed wire fence and getting like cut on that. And I don't think I got a tetanus shot. Oh my gosh, I'm late for my tetanus shot, babe. Um, like I don't think I did. I had a scar on my arm for the longest time. I still had the shoes from where I got like they got ripped, and they had red paint because we were painting it red on top of that. Like, why?
That is so bizarre. Like I've
It
never heard
is.
of anyone like painting a barbed wire
I also
fence
had my
red.
first job across the street from that first program in Utah when I was like 13 or 14. It was at like an RV camper pull-in park thing. So I'd
Hmm.
have to like wash beds and stuff and like just cross the street. And it was a privilege. I had earned the right to go wash other people's butt sweat off of things. Um, Little entrepreneur. Um, so where did I go? Right, New Mexico. So I'm there for long enough to go to a prom my sophomore year. Um, and get on MySpace for the first time because it's 2005. Um, After all the weight gain, my parents find another program, the first ever fat treatment center, called Wellspring Academy of the Sierras, located in California, um, where it's not so much about the physical stuff, which like that does happen. It's really about the starvation and the exercise.
Mm.
And the taking you off all of your psych meds because we don't have a psychiatrist, fun fact.
Okay. That
So,
just seems really bizarre. Like you just put on all these meds
oh my god, it
and
just
then this
occurred
like
to me.
taking you off it.
So I spent the next 3 months in a manic episode, and they diagnosed me as bipolar first, then took me off all of my meds. And I went rapid cycling actually between like trying to kill myself and being so full of energy that I don't need food. So I
Right.
did actually lose a lot of weight and look fabulous by the time I got out. I also refused to leave my room for like at least a week straight. And they also had a wilderness program, and I like made some friends that way because they would come and join us after their wilderness adventures. But the most notable thing, other than the friends I made along the way and the starvation I forced upon myself, and the fact that I did not sleep for a week straight because they took me off all those meds. And I started hallucinating around day 3, right after
Mhm.
all my roommates had left for a camping trip, because it was always camping, um, for a camping trip. But they had just made me watch The Haunting of Emily Rose, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, something like that,
Right.
where it's also in a dorm type setting. So yeah, I started hallucinating that, and the girl from the garage trying to like snuggle up with me at night, and the staff wouldn't let me keep my light on. So I had to drag my mattress into the doorway so I could sleep near the light. Because yeah, and I was like that for like a week.
Oh, I
Well,
bet.
4 days. Yeah, yeah. So eventually I got some sleep, but I also wasn't eating, and and I was
Mhm.
all over the place. And they never. I don't know how they eventually made me leave my room. I don't know, but they did. They had emus there. I totally forgot about that. They had emus there. Except one got attacked by a pit bull while I was there as well. There was like a fight between an emu and a pit bull. It was like a baby emu. Yeah.
I feel like that would
It was,
be traumatizing to watch.
yes, it was super bloody. Um but it's also traumatizing, the fact that Amazon was coming up at this time, and this staff member has published a book about his time there. He was my English teacher, and he wrote a book called Fat School Confidential, I think, about how he ran away and left his wife and child behind for a student at a program.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that is insane. Like, why would you do that? And then, like,
Yeah.
publish that on Amazon. And, like, now Amazon's huge, but, like, back then it was, like, the start. Like, we're
Right.
talking MySpace days. So it's,
Right.
like, MySpace and Amazon are both just baby starting things, and you can still find that.
Yeah.
And probably shouldn't buy it, but, like, it's there. It's like he wrote a book and he put it out there, and I didn't pay to read it, but like
Yeah.
it's a girl on the cover, and I don't really care how he feels about it. It's just weird that you want to write a book about that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But after that, I went home, and home wasn't actually all that much better, because my life was still heavily regulated by my parents. They didn't have to go through therapy. They didn't have to work on anything really. Like they say that they did, but you know, throughout the timeline of my life, where do you think I got this at 3? I developed and Caprice's thing. It's like I had to break down this timeline, and all of these points that we established, it wasn't my fault, but it was still on me to change the behavior.
Yeah. It's like it's her that's the problem, not us. So
Right,
she's gonna
right,
work on the
exactly.
problems, but not us.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's not the fact that you two definitely should not have had kids. I don't know why you
Yeah.
convinced yourself to do that. Like they were convinced to do that, and I don't know why. Um, uh, And then they didn't send my sister to anything. They took like a completely hands-off approach regarding mental health stuff. Like maybe there was like a few interventions here and there, but as an adult, my parents did not bug her off, because I also didn't get any better, because of course I didn't. It's messed up to say this, but even I left in 2006, and even into 2008, I was calling back into the program because I was lonely and I didn't have a lot of friends to talk to about things. And when something would happen, I was always told to call the ranch. Call the ranch. Okay. Talk to a staff. Okay. So my name's blah blah. What's your name? Like, how long have you been there? Um, who's been there the longest? Like, it's been like a year and a half since I left, and I remember there were only like 2 staff left that knew who I was, other than like the main ones, because
Right.
there's a lot of turnover and
Yeah.
things like that. And I remember it being hard because like even my favorite staff, you get edged out. She was a sweet, loving woman, and that she just wanted to help. And she left like shortly after I got out. Maybe I'm not really sure on her timeline because she died. Um, and like I said, the kind people get edged out, or they get brainwashed like the rest of us.
Yeah.
So, at 18, at 17, I know, like, my 17th birthday, my family and I weren't talking. I was living with my boyfriend and his mom in their apartment. And when we broke up, I had to go back to my family. There was also, like, he hit me. And my mom took it a lot more seriously than I did. And she was right, but she wasn't right. But, like, it's hard. He hit me because he thought I was being manic. Because, like, that's what he thought. I don't know. I don't know. I still don't really get it because I don't. My mom found out and she cut off all contact with him for me. And over time, he wanted to talk to me less and less. And it just felt so sudden after having such a fucked up, all the social stuff of,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
troubled teen stuff. So I tried to kill myself. And while I was, 18 at this point, my parents did something kind of like a conservatorship where I had to I had to take my meds. It was an injection, a really old one too, and I always like broke out afterwards because something in it made me itchy. But it was better than the meds because the meds, we're talking county psychiatrists, so they don't really care
Mhm.
what I have to say and that I'm gaining more weight, and they don't care that my blood pressure is dangerously high the second day I'm taking Geodon. So I made that choice for myself and just went with a shot for years. I couldn't control my income, uh, and couch surfing for a while at sometimes at grown adult facilities, just not in very stable positions, always encountering some sort of sexual assault. It's just like it's
Yeah.
always followed me, Um, Eventually, I have followed the program enough and accepted my parents' love and been grateful for it. Um, and in my, I don't know, like 21 or 22, I finally get some of that back, like from my parents. I think there's still somewhere else I had to go for my finances, but my autonomy is trickled back to me, so I end up, I'm also trying to go through college this whole time. I started right out of high school. I graduated kind of early and was only ever doing part time, but I started to take it seriously after a few shitty relationships. Uh, some of them were really funny. Like I said, the one finding out that you got cheated on 2 years after the fact because you were both talking shit about how bad he was in bed. Um, right? She
Hmm.
was cheating on her boyfriend with him too. She's like, yeah, and she's like, and he wasn't good in bed. I don't know why he did that. He was still better than my boyfriend at it. I'm like, oh man, he's the reason I learned how to make myself finish. Thanks for that, I guess. So and around this time, I'm dating my second fiance. Oh, there's second fiance. I'm on my third now. I've never been married. I'm on Social Security, so it will impact my finances if I do. So
Hmm. Yep.
I'll always
I just
engaged.
recently learned about that, so I had no
Yep.
idea that was a thing.
Yeah, but you know, we've joked about getting domestic partnerships, to call it DP'd, but I don't know if that's also like legally a. It's really I just want to know that if something happens to me, he's not going to get fucked
Yeah.
because I have a few significant relationships, but to summarize them briefly, I had the fuckboy that I couldn't stop fucking, who also couldn't stop fucking literally everything. Um, and lied about literally everything. And then um, the grown man who basically did the same thing, but also exposed me to kink and all of that. The same year I had weight loss surgery, so my body was physically vulnerable, and he cheated on me on my birthday, and I also had a miscarriage, and decided to get my tubes tied because of that. Well, not tied out,
Yeah.
but um, and then I met uh, I've been calling him Muffin. Because even though he's dead, his parents do not like me. Which wasn't the way that it felt when he was alive. But we met at the end of the year, and it's like I had experienced sexual assault a lot. I had been raped in my own home. Uh, After I turned 18, my parents were on a cruise, and all of my they got robbed while I was unconscious. And it was horrible, and I was still drunk somehow for like 2 days. It was also the psych meds because like I was also being given this injection, and nobody ever factored that in,
Yeah.
ever, ever. And it was always just me. I was the problem. So that was crappy, and the detective talked to him about raping me when I specifically asked her not to. I was just like, please just find out where the stuff that got stolen is, because my mom, I told my mom, she didn't tell my dad. I didn't know that, and I went through all of that by myself. Um, then, the shit with the fuck boy and all of the court stuff. I get to college. I get to full point, like at 24, I finally start going, I think, like full time. Um, and I graduate at 28, a month and a half after having weight loss surgery. And my best friend, I think, rapes me as well along the way. I experienced, it was literally even numbered years a lot of the time. Like I had this like weird superstition for a while. So I remember that because when I met Muffin, it was December of 2018, and I remember feeling so grateful because I hadn't been raped that year. I was like, I finally did it. Um, and he had also just gotten out of the psych ward, and I was in the psych ward because I had a miscarriage. So, like, he had gotten out. We didn't meet in the psych ward. He had actually moved back to my state to be with family after being in the psych ward and having a DUI. And I had been out of the psych ward like 3 months before this. And it was preventative. It was like, I feel really depressed. I'm also going through something physically. And yeah. So I empathized when he told me that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had my rule, my 2 month rule of like, you know, this isn't a serious thing. We're not in a relationship. We're still getting to know each other for the next 2 months. And I got to know him. I knew that he had DV in his past and that he felt that his parents got him out of it legally because it wasn't on his record. And that's why he told me, because he felt it was wrong that it wasn't on his record.
Mm-hmm.
He taught me a lot about so many different things. Even with my own experience of the troubled teen industry, I didn't know the word gooned until him. Um, he was the smartest man I knew, other than my dad. And it was 6 months in. He had also experienced grief. He was widowed at like 20, before he was even 21. And he had lost a best friend to suicide. And it was 6 months in, was August, because August was always the bad month. That's also when his birthday was. It was the first time that he choked me. I remember that he looked like this scared little creature when I walked in, and I wanted to comfort him, but then he attacked me, and I was like pinned to the floor. And that's actually where I got my cat from. It was him. But I was 6 months in, and I stayed, obviously, because I thought, like, I knew that he had trauma that he wasn't dealing with, and I helped him get into therapy and start dealing with all that. But it hurts to start picking at those scabs. And boy, does it. Oh boy. When we moved in together, we found a 2 bedroom apartment, and we went into it looking for a 2 bedroom because he knew that I would need another bedroom to be safe, that I'd have to take me and the cats into another bedroom to be safe. And I lost my cat during that time too, like right after we moved to get in together. Like my emotional support animal died of spontaneous random cancer that like turned his eyes from like blue to green. So it was like also super traumatic.
Oh
In that
no.
apartment, in that apartment, I have lost 2 cats and a boyfriend. I also lived there the longest, so I guess it's just like, you know, what are the odds?
Yeah.
Pretty high, apparently. But so the next August, he killed himself. After attacking his cat, I defended her, and some of our friend group knew, some didn't. Some were alcoholics that enabled his behavior and wanted to fuck him, and then started saying nasty shit about me on Facebook, vague booking about like how it was my fault that he killed himself, that I abused him. And then the same week that he died, his parents like called the cops because I had him boxed up his stuff. And so naturally, I ended up in another abusive relationship with my middle school crush who had bought a house a mile from me. And then, oh, man, I'm sorry, I like bounce around my own timeline
No,
a
you're
lot.
fine. You're fine.
There's also probably like the most significant thing is I didn't get my license until I was 23, and I got my license at 23 because of the getting raped of that year. Was he started stalking me after the fact, and he had targeted me. he and I went to the cops, and it was awful. And by the time I got with Muffin, I called that guy the lawyer, the one who raped me. The lawyer happened in 2012, and it's 2019 when I move in with Muffin. And I didn't realize that that place was a mile from where I got raped until Muffin died, and I got on Tinder, and I saw my rapist.
That
And
would have been
I
really
no longer
triggering.
like, yeah, like, and it's literally during the time that I'm already experiencing the trauma of like he died in our house,
Yeah.
and he thought I was dead, and like the EMTs took 20 minutes to get there, so like didn't really matter how long it, yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
lost cause. Um, and then my other ex that we grew up together in a sense, and I always had a crush on him and didn't realize that he had a drinking problem until it was too late. And but I had a really great support system by that point. My best friend works in mental health and was helping me build up resilience factors, so I was able to get out. And now, it's like I have finally experienced not rape for long enough, and not abusive boyfriends for long enough that I can start unpacking the troubled teen stuff. Because, like, actually, thank God that I waited and didn't do that first, because
Right.
there's it's so there's so much to it. Um,
Right.
there's it just goes so deep. Okay. What is
I did have a question for you
Yes, go for
before.
it.
So, with you experiencing everything you did in the troubled teen industry,
Yes.
you knowing yourself better now, what or how do you feel, or what do you think would have helped you more mentally instead of going to those programs? Because obviously, those programs, you know, they're they're not great. So, what is
Yeah.
something if your parents would have actually helped you in a different way? Do you know what resources or things that you think would have benefited you better?
So I have two thoughts. The first is the things that I think would benefit me now. Like in hindsight, I do have that.
Mhm.
But there was something else that you had said that I had an answer to. I know that like part of it is this aspect that like when you send a kid into these programs and they're telling you your kid's manipulating you and your kid's going to say this and the kid's going to say that, it's like, have you stopped to consider that your kid is not manipulative? That
Mhm.
manipulative is a coping mechanism. Your kid is trying to communicate. You need to find a way to get the message through. Get a
Right.
bigger satellite dish, my guy. You know. So there are some things that I do think helped, like the horses and stuff. There's some metaphors there, right? Like when you're responsible for building that bond with the horse, where you're responsible for setting up your own saddle, knowing that it's on you if you fall off on your ride later. That's that is something. I also think that anything that you can see progress when you feel hopeless, and something that you can see at the end of the day. Like, I think that's probably why they made us do crocheting and stuff, but I think crocheting felt just as hopeless for me. Like we didn't have a whole variety of things, but ultimately you shouldn't outsource that to somebody else. You should be there with your kid. If a program is not letting you talk to your kid, that is not okay. That is a
Right.
red flag. That is terrifying. Like, if you can't talk to your kid and they're telling you that your kid's lying, you know, what kind of quality communication are you getting about what
Right.
your kid needs when you can't talk to your kid?
Right.
Um, I got it. So
Okay.
the other thing is that like brainwashing is literally part of these programs. Behavior modification, it's in the title. Positive peer culture. They're telling you what they're doing, but they're framing it as something else, right? What positive peer culture has done for me is culture is brainwashed me into accepting abuse. That as long as I ride this out, it will get better.
Yeah.
Right? it didn't get better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still on me to get better for the same problems that landed me in there. That weren't my problems. They were a symptom. My problems were a symptom of my parents' problems. And really, I would say that's a lot of things. Because, like, yeah, sure, I had some problems. And there are probably kids that end up there that have problems with drugs and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, yeah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
there definitely is that. But
Yeah.
there's also just the new stepmom doesn't really want you there. There's also just your dad doesn't even know you're there because they didn't know that they don't have to notify him because he doesn't have custody.
Mm-hmm.
There's like there's so many not even morally gray, like just this can't be legal because it's like Oregon is the only place that has like regulations against the people that can legally kidnap your kid. Things like you
Mm-hmm.
can't use chemical restraints. Wow, I didn't know that you had to it's really that hard to get a kid to go somewhere that you have to drug them.
Yeah.
You have to drug them and put a black hood over them and like handcuff them. Like, come
Mm-hmm.
on, man. That's that seems like extreme communication issues. Um,
Yes.
but what I think it's communication issues. Like, obviously, there's something going on that your kid needs to talk about, and there are some cases that there just is nothing that can. I'm talking like, kids murdering other kids, like,
Yeah.
sociopath stuff. Like, yeah, okay, like, I still don't think they deserve that, though. Like,
No.
they're
Yeah.
still kids. They're still kids. But if you justify, okay, well, a little Kevin over here actually did kill somebody, little Johnny over here just, like, cries and, like, cuts himself listening to My Chemical Romance sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're putting them in the same place.
Yeah. No.
And you're saying that the standard is you act up, we're putting a knee in your back. If it's okay for Kevin, it's okay for Johnny. If Kevin is, 17 and the size of a 17-year-old, and you got Johnny and he's 12 and maybe not even the size of a 12-year-old, that's how kids die.
Yeah.
That's why kids die. So when you say it's like the death penalty, when you say it's okay for one kind of bad kid, it's okay for all kinds of bad kids, and then also kids who aren't even bad, because the foster care system is funneling kids into these places. And they
Yep.
have been for a really long time. And I didn't even realize that until now. And it's like, you don't even realize when you're there that I realized this year that there's programs here in my state that even the program, like the people that own my program, had a program here at one point in the last 20 years that I've lived here. And I'm just like, it follows you. Even
Yeah.
not in the way that it followed me, where, my parents still took my autonomy in the way that treatment always did. But to see that it's just everywhere, and it, both sides take money. It's a political issue too,
Mm-hmm.
Even the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act, like that's some of the first like legislation, some of the first stuff that's been put forward, and we've got Paris Hilton, putting a
Mm-hmm.
face to it, but it's not without problems too, because you always have to make concessions when it comes to politics. You have to go to the middle of the aisle, and there shouldn't be a middle of the aisle on child abuse. There shouldn't be a middle of the aisle on kids dying. I'm sorry.
Yes.
There's just not a middle of the aisle for me on
Mm-hmm.
that one. But I've been reading reviews of open programs in my state on TikTok. Positive Pure Cult with an underscore is my username there. Um, and trying to get stuff started to raise awareness here, but it's in the end, I end up feeling the same way I did when I went in. I feel like I'm struggling to get people to listen,
Mm-hmm.
and they still just don't, like, sometimes they just don't want to. And I think the difference is that, like, I'm done with the conditioning to just accept that. I'm not gonna stop talking about it. So if I get annoying and I hyper focus on all of this stuff,
It's almost, I mean,
Someone
in all
needs to.
honesty, it needs to be hyper focused on because like
Right.
I was telling you before, I only really found out what it was finding your TikTok and like watching your TikToks. Like I had no idea what it was, and I did research and I was like, "Oh, okay," because I knew like Bad Baby, she had
Yeah,
went
yeah,
through one of
yeah.
those. So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I was like,
and like
"Oh,"
that's
so like it kind of
everybody wants
connected it
that,
for me. Yeah.
right? So Dr. Phil fills the same role. He fills the same role as an education consultant who can be even recommended to you by your kid's school.
Yeah.
It could be your kid's psychiatrist.
Right.
And then you look into these like programs that have, you know, I say programs. We look at a parent company that has all these other shell companies all across states, different names. They have a psych ward. So you could be screwed the moment you set foot in there trying to get your kid
Mhm.
help, and they're like, "Well, yeah, he's been here for like 2 weeks, but we're gonna need you to, you know, we can't provide care here. But we have a facility out in Montana, you know."
That's just really weird to me. Like there should be some form of care. Like that just
It's
it's yeah.
my generation. I call the like brochure generation, where like they still tried to like they're still trying to market it in different ways now, but like it's like a spa sort of thing. Well, not quite a spa, but like, you know, it's like summer camp, year-round summer camp. They'll be with horses. They'll be, you know, doing community service, being part of the
Mhm.
community. Yeah, well, you know, it's not like that. Um,
No. But I
yeah,
feel like that would probably be more beneficial if they had therapy and like actual programs to make people like you were saying like the horse thing was helping you in a way
exactly,
because it was
exactly.
benefiting you and you were doing things and you felt proactive and that is something that was like yes then that is something to go towards not leaving kids stranded out in the wilderness to fend for themselves and like
Right.
going through all this horrific stuff, not to mention the abuse you get from the
The
people who were
staff
supposed to be
and
helping you. Yeah.
the staff, and then your peers, and
Yeah.
on top of that, the medication. I
Yeah.
mean, I have like some really funny stories about other people's first experiences of Ambien.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
actually, yeah, like quite a few. Um, and no teenager really needs to be on that.
No.
Um, you know, uh, but I think like one of the things I've realized as an adult, like my fiance does construction, so I'll drop him off. We were sharing a car at one point, and I dropped him off to work, and you know it's a brand new job site. He's not started yet, and I pick him up at the end of the day, and oh my gosh, that's the bones of a building. And I think about how rewarding it is to like leave at the end of the day and have something that you can say like, okay, well if nothing else, there it is. I did that, right?
Hmm.
I don't have a whole lot of that left from like my time in the troubled teen industry and whatnot. But there are ways that you can provide that for your kid without sending them there.
Hmm.
Your kid should be at home. But the funding has been going to these places, not places that keep them in the community because there's no money
Yes.
to be made there. That's all the that's all the goody two shoes stuff.
Yeah.
That's not a place for child abusers. But
It's like they literally made children's mental health problems and the experiences they were having. They're like, let's make this into a money situation and like
exactly.
act like we're going to help them, but in reality, we're just in it for the money. We're gonna,
Right.
do this
Right.
and abuse them and get what we want out of it and like take the parents' money. But in reality, like these kids, we don't give a fuck about these kids.
Exactly. Exactly. And it just causes more trauma. It's like
Yes.
the trauma is the point. And if you think about it in any other way, right? It's like, okay, I I have a child and I want to keep my child safe. But right now my child is going through something and I don't feel like my child is safe. So what I'm going to do is instead of knowing that like at least if my child is with me, if something happens, I can blame myself and go to therapy.
Hmm.
Like I can blame myself and go to therapy, right? But if something happens, that I can at least be there. I can see it, you know, I can be there. But now I'm so scared for my kids' safety. I'm gonna make sure that they're around people whose names I don't even know every day for years and and get to talk to them for like 10 minutes, maybe once every 2 weeks, and like come for a visit here and there. And I'm just going to trust that these nameless, faceless strangers that I have not met, because they are rotating staff and there is no way that you will know all of their names. I promise you that. You're just going to trust that.
Yeah.
You're going to, the nameless, faceless staff hired by the Goon Squad company to, I always say it like that because it, like, otherwise it just sounds kind of pervy now because of the internet. But
Right.
I got to say it kind of goofy. You hire these nameless, faceless brutes that show up to your door. It's like now we have Uber, and you're like, okay, you get the face of the Uber driver. That was not a thing back then. This is the face of the man kidnapping your kid that you paid for, and coming to your front door tonight at 7 p.m. Like,
That's just bizarre. Like, I'm sorry. Like,
it is. It is. You would
I
not
don't
trust it
understand.
in any other situation.
No.
Why do you trust the fact that because your kid, you don't feel that your kid is safe, you're going to trust some strangers more than yourself? What does that say? What does that say? It means you don't trust you. It
Yeah.
means that you don't trust you, ultimately, if you're willing to outsource it. And like, if
That
you don't
I
see your,
just
like,
can't
and it's
say.
not that you have to see yourself as the professional, but these people are grifters telling you that they're professionals, and you would not be okay with it in any other situation, but you are desperate and you need to be smarter than they are. And you can't be when you're desperate. And that's how this works. That is the grift for parents, is that. And the grift for kids is like, I've seen other podcasts that say things like, why would a survivor of a program ever recommend that program? That was part of the brainwashing from day one.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, who do you think the people are that are screaming at you? I mean, in different iterations, it's people that have graduated and come back to just do it because it's fun for them, or because they think that it's beneficial, or because it's brainwashing, in both. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, for a while, I wanted to go back there. I wanted to go back and be a staff there. I don't know if it was really because I wanted to protect the kids, if it was because, I thought it was a good thing, but the thing that prevented me was not having my license. So, in the
Yeah.
end, it's a good thing, because I'm not the only one who had that desire. They put that desire in you, call the ranch.
Yeah.
That's what they tell, that's what I,
Yeah.
is drilled into your head. It works if you work it, so work it because you're worth it. Like, we had these mantras drilled into our head.
That's
And
just
so many different ones, but like also all the same sort of thing that, and if you hear them out of context, right? Like, if you hear just bits and pieces of these things, like, my parents paid a bunch of money for strangers to kidnap me. Like, if you just heard that in passing, you'd be like, what the hell? Oh, they were
yeah.
taking me to, like, a long-term psych ward, basically, with, like, horrific abusers. It's fine. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I'd do that to my
See,
kid. Yeah.
and like, okay, so I'm a mother. I have a 15-year-old and I have a 7-year-old. And like, I don't know. I don't know. It's because like I have gone through trauma and I don't want my children to experience trauma in the sense of that. And I have like a moral sense of responsibility for myself to be like, I am going to provide more for my kids than my parents did for myself. It's kind of like the ongoing thing. You want to provide more for your kids. Well, I don't want to just provide a stability. I want to have mental space for them because I know as a kid, that's what I needed. I needed the mental space. I need someone to speak to. I needed someone to have my back and be my safe person. And I know if my child was going through that, I would never imagine sending my daughter away.
Yeah.
Never. That's just something like that does not even seem like anything in my mind. Like, yep, this is the best. Like, no, I can't. Like, my child is even talking about like leaving the country as soon as she graduates high school. And like, yes, I know that would benefit her, but I'm like, even so, I was like, you're my baby. How could you
Right.
go? You know what I mean?
Right.
I just
Right.
even
The
if it
world is
was for
scary.
like, right, the world is scary in the sense that like going, even if it is like medical, let's say we're not even talking about mental health, let's say we're even just talking about like your child has cancer and something like that, would you put your child through the same thing of like leaving your kid and just letting them fend for yourself? No.
It's
Like
like you wouldn't take your kid to a surgeon in a country where you don't speak the language,
mhm,
and you wouldn't stay home for that. Why are you staying home for this? What?
exactly.
Because it's what? Because it's long term, and like,
Right. Well, I know
your problem
even
as a family is long term too.
the only experience that I've ever had with like the psych ward or anything like that. Um, Unfortunately, I was really good at hiding my pain as a teenager. So like I should have went to these things for a long time, but I was really good
Mhm.
at hiding it. And I was the elder child syndrome. Yes, mommy, I
Yeah.
can help you do this. I was the overachiever type kid who would like to hide their pain. My sister, Abby, not so much. And there was a time where she did have a whole ass episode where she tried to commit suicide right in front of us, and we had to rush her to the hospital. And then just even being separated from my sister while she was in the ambulance, my mom and I drove after and had to find her in a completely different hospital. And it was just my mom never stopped searching. She was like, I don't even care. And then when they decided, yes, we're going to keep her here for a week to get help, blah, 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 go through therapy, my mom is like, okay, I'm taking a week off of work. I'm going to go stay in a hotel. I'm going to be checking in. Like, that was not, it was never in her mind to like, yes, I'm going to leave my child here in this completely different city. Even though we were in state,
Right.
it was still a 2-hour drive. She was still like, no, I will get a hotel. I will be here. I'm not leaving my child.
Right.
You know, I know they're getting help. So like, I don't know if it also just comes from that, but like, I cannot imagine just like,
it's like, I like,
doing
and I
that.
also, I guess I get, like multiple psych ward stays over like a few months, a year. I don't know. Like, the thing is, my parents were always taking me to doctors. Like, I have an IQ test from when I was 6, and some of my documents, that kind of were included in all of this volume of stuff. I have that, and then like there was a group for the fact that I wasn't good at socializing or something. Like, it's like all of these problems that have kind of continued to follow me, but I got diagnosed with ADHD at 7, and was seeing a psychiatrist for this encopresis stuff, and diagnosed with like 15 different things when I was like 13, or no, yeah, it's like you shouldn't be diagnosing kids with stuff like this anyways, and you were sending me to all the professionals instead of trying to do it yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's ultimately what it came down to, is like, I asked my parents, I asked how much they spent, and that's like new house money.
Yeah.
That's like nice new house money, and you could have just bought a new house and had a different job and spent time at home with your kids instead of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I feel that. I feel, yeah, this is a very, like, I could probably keep going on and on. This is like how like in
I
depth this
totally get
topic
it.
is. Like,
Well, and I can better prepare next time with like a specific part of the. We can do like a follow up on the stuff that I'm doing here, because
yeah,
I do have like a meeting with a state legislator, but
yeah.
fingers crossed, but like not really. About I manage my expectations at all
Mm-hmm.
times. I am
No,
hopeful, but
yeah.
yeah.
With your TikTok, are you mainly just focusing on places in your state? Are you trying to do like the ones in like Utah and like just
So
what is, I guess, what is, I know your overall goal is to give awareness and to make sure people aren't sending their kids to these places and stuff
yeah.
like that. But like, how are you wanting it to grow? And so you're like, okay, I covered all of them in this state. Let's kind of go to this one, or,
Yes and no. So it is kind of
okay.
like that, but it also isn't. So there are survivors everywhere, and I've been slowly networking and talking to people, and I don't think the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act is enough. Obviously, there's got to be more of everything, because it's got to be that middle road, right?
Yeah.
And my thought is that you got to focus on your own backyard, because when I started to realize that there's stuff in my own backyard, I started posting about it. I saw other comments that were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a survivor in your state, and I don't know anybody else in the state who's been through that." And I also realized the same thing, and I was just like, "Wow, that's two."
Yeah.
And then I start, finding more and more, and you build up this community. So it's like, okay, well, you know, if Ohio, where I live, has different regulations than Indiana, the state next door, that's something. the people in Indiana can do something and grassroots the programs near you, because I don't, for me to really be a pain in the butt for the program I went to that's still open, I'd have to move to Utah. And like, it's
Yeah.
beautiful, but like everything else about it, it's Utah, but the people who run it make it garbage.
Yes, I understand that completely.
It's
That's
like
how I feel
it's
about
like
Iowa. It's
perfectly
beautiful, but like the government is shit.
it's like perfectly tied up with the nightmare that I have, that all survive well, not all survivors, but it's common that you have the nightmare of waking back up in treatment. But when I wake up, or that you're back in treatment or whatever, but for me, I have the specific one that I wake up and I'm still in that bunk bed and I can see out the window, like there's this small window that goes like, kind of like this, like a half moon, and I can see the sunrise over the like red ridge, and it fills me with horror. It's beautiful, but it fills me with horror because Utah is beautiful, but the people who run it make it horrific.
Yes. Yes, I get
Yeah.
that completely. Yeah. I know. So you're definitely wanting to make sure the legislation, haha, I said it right. The
Yes, right.
legislation in
Get the
Ohio
law on the side.
passes. Yeah. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
need to
well,
get
something.
work
Not
on one
necessarily.
state first.
I'm working towards building up a nonprofit. I'm working with others that are doing similar things to what I want to do, which is providing resources to survivors. In Ohio, there's one already called Survivors Unrestrained, and she's wonderful. The person who runs that, because you could also think, with Helene, there were a lot of programs there,
Yeah.
and that's that. Well, I'll just leave it at that. And Florida, there's programs there too. There's, oh god, Florida stuff. They're just like
Yeah.
Utah, but with alligators.
Yep.
So.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can do like a follow up where I dig more into the specifics and stuff in Ohio as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I
But
would love to have you back.
ultimately, I think the goal is to have a little branch in every state where we're trying to hack down that tree.
Yeah. Yep. No, I
Yeah.
think that was amazing. Because like I was saying, like I feel even I mean, I guess I go out looking for stuff on my TikTok. Like looking for people and because I want to share people's stories. But like I have already learned so much from yours, and it's me like sharing it to my personal, so then I can share it to other people. Because I was like, I didn't even know. Like I said, finding yours led me down a whole rabbit hole to other
Yeah.
things. Because I was like, I knew maybe this much about it, and now I feel like I know more. I'm still
Right.
actually learning, but like
Well, and even
I'm
going
just
through it,
appalled by it. Like, yeah, and like
going
you've
through
been
it,
through
it's
it.
like, yeah, I knew there were other programs. I knew there were different kinds of programs, right? But like,
Mhm.
even going through it, I realized that back then the boarding school that I went to, which was a legit boarding school, they advertised on the same website that all of these places did, and they allowed the transporters. So like, it's also kind of a bad idea to send your kids somewhere that someone's sending their troubled kids, right? You
Yes.
don't know what those other kids' problems are. But even having survived all of these different varieties of programs, like I have a pretty nice hand, a nice deck here of different stuff. I had no idea how far back it goes, the ties to the religion, the ties to like actual cult brainwashing. Like, it
Yeah.
sounds like when I tell people about like some of the ways that you get brainwashed into it, they're like, so they like MK Ultra, dude? And I'm like, I don't I don't actually know what that is. So
Yeah. I
I had
have no
someone say
idea what
that.
that is
I had
either.
someone say that, and I know I've like seen that mentioned in Stranger Things, but like I don't know. You have to completely unpack that person
Yeah.
and all that trauma, and it's whew. But even to be able to get to that point that I could stop and think about it, and then realizing like, oh, that there are survivors older than me. There are survivors younger than me. There are kids still in programs, and the programs take kids as young as 3, 5, 7.
That's
Like
insane.
depending. Like, I've seen in different states. I've seen it all over. Here, I've seen youngest as being 5, but Illinois, I've seen one that's 3.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the foster care system is also part of this, because who do you think is? ending up there.
Yeah. It's like, oh,
And
we can't find you any other homes. We're gonna just
exactly.
put you in this program.
And that's the other part of, we need to have, better vetting for people, but we also need it to not just be mom and dad. Like, if there's other options, maybe we should be building those up instead of, more religious schools or these kind of programs.
Yep.
Day programs. Like, there's so many of those kind of things for adults in my area, but not nearly as many for kids that focus on the mental health aspect and don't cost a butt ton of money. Because, yeah. But we can get more into that later.
No, you're good. Yeah, no, I absolutely loved having you on. I love, honestly, I know your little ADHD moments when you would make references and you're trying, I get it, because when you talk about trauma, sometimes you're like, I gotta make these jokes because I find it funny because I was in this thing and I was like, yeah, no, I totally get it. Like,
and you know what? You're welcome to like bounce it around and make whatever you want with the ramble that I did. So, and
oh, no, you're fine.
I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, I definitely want to have you on. Probably, I want to know how everything goes with like legislation and I'll probably be sharing all your stuff still too.
Next year ish, because I'm also going to be moving. So, we can end and I will wait.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I will have your TikTok linked in the oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking right now. The description below. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I get so used to like listening that when I have to start talking again, I'm just like, oh yeah.
Go do voice.
Yes. If you are interested in coming onto the podcast to share your story, you can send me an email at sorryfortraumadumpingpodcast@gmail.com. It's really long, but you won't forget it. I also have a TikTok. I have a Facebook page, Facebook group, all that stuff other than Twitter because fuck Elon Musk.
He must.
Yes. But that is going to wrap up this episode. So we will see you next time. Bye.
Yeah.